Hey kids, I'm back from the store and I bought you a little brother. Uh, just a heads up, I like him more than you, so get used to being ignored. Anyway, I also have this blind second Raptor deck. It's pretty solid. I've been grinding DB when I have spare time with it and reached a decent rating, I think. Honestly, I got no clue how to read the ratings on this awful website. I'm pretty sure bigger first number is roughly equal to better player and therefore better person, but for the life of me, I cannot figure out how the second number factors in. I'm going to cut myself off here before this becomes more of a rant about DB than a video about birds. If you know what on earth DB rating means and what a good rating is, drop a comment below. Blinding second probably seems like kind of a dubious plan, given how birds traditionally struggle into established boards, but after analyzing the meta, digging through archives looking for techs, and consulting my top scientists, I came to a couple realizations that made going second the obvious choice. Mostly that going first sucks ass. This will change once the meta is saved from the wretched Cyclops, but basically, after a lot of testing, I realized hand traps were too low impact for me to be clogging my hand with them, and every impactful card is only good going second. Playing hand traps and going first meant having a lower individual card quality in my main deck, but I'd also have the most loaded sideboard imaginable. I would like to have the most loaded main deck imaginable, and don't like to accept that I'd lose 50% of my game ones to a dice roll and 25% more to 2 or 3 hand traps, so I just decided to say, fuck it. We ball. It also helps that the Raptor core is actually pretty good at breaking boards once you stick a rank 4. The amount of mid-rank up magics that convert to near instant OTKs or beat negation on your one major choke point is kind of staggering. There are also a ton of small synergies with board breaking tools that make it way more appealing than just jamming 3 Droplet, 3 Dark Ruler, and 3 Talents into whatever other random deck I could be playing. The main thing that really helps when you play Blind Second with power spells is that you have really good discards for cards like Forbidden Droplet and Magical Spring. Raid Raptor functionally gets to free roll Droplet for 2 through Bloom Vulture's Graveyard effect, and the best part is they can't even Bestial you because your field is empty. If you open Bloom, Raider's Wing, and Droplet, it's like, what do they even do? What do they even do? Honestly, the hardest part of getting this deck to work was coming to terms with every deck building choice I hate to make when I plan to go first. 3 Raider's Wing, 2 Noir. Honestly, if needing a rank 8 came up more than once every 500 games, I'd probably just drop the deck and go back to Blackwing or start playing like Performapal Runic or something. Basically, the main way you lose games on the draw is opening hands with too many normal summons, so I cut down on the more subpar dedicated normals like Noir to maximize my odds of seeing Tribute as my only normal summon. Tribute's really good because not only is it a foolish, but it also eats SP Little Knight alive. Being able to just donk Interruption before committing is huge, especially because in main phase 2 you get to just grab the rank up that beats the rest of your opponent's board or free up a later search for an extender. Just, be careful when you go for this play in low ladder.
Sky Attack rains down havoc.
Despite trying to have as few normal summons as possible, I am on 3 Raider's Wing. I'm a 1-wing truther, but when you're blinding second, being able to insulate yourself against as much as possible is really important, and when you open Bloom Vulture and Raider's Wing together, you just become the final boss. The real star of this show is Magical Spring. Unironically, this is the best card in the entire game during this format. You do kind of have to hold it for an annoying amount of time against patient Snake Eye players, but against any competent deck, it's always Destiny Draw at worst and better Graceful Charity at best. Resolving this card against Horus Centurion added like a decade to my lifespan. That lingering protection for your opponent's back row seems like a pain at first, but the secret truth is that it's sometimes actually disruption. If your opponent on Voiceless Voice lets Magical Spring resolve, you turn off the effect of Radiance to pop because it has to be able to pop itself to resolve. Also, God forbid your opponent is on Unchained, trying to make it work with only one Sharvara. Honestly, the main thing that makes going second really nice is that going first is really scary against any fire deck right now. There are just so many ways things can go wrong for you if the opponent can attack. In almost any other format, I wouldn't have cared at all if my opponent got a battle phase while I had a tower, let alone 3. And nowadays, though... Being able to punch through the board and just end it there instead of trying to win a grind game after pushing through hand traps is just so nice, even if playing on DB without turn 0 plays can be a bit mind-numbing at times. Mind you, this build does have a much larger Nibiru problem than the standard one. By nature of needing to play into uninterrupted boards, you just get owned sometimes by opponents willing to lose their board to give you a rock. Most game ones I've dropped so far have been because I was trying to weave my way through interruptions, and then when I finally clear the path, the meteor happens. One of the more awkward parts of the deck can definitely be Fuzzy Lanius. It's an amazing discard, and I do plan to be Raptor locked most of the time, but it can really suck when you have to lock yourself, then later realize you need Azalea to break a floodgate. Speaking of, summon limit is a massive problem for this deck. Bloom Vulture makes it far easier because it gets both halves of Azalea on field in one summon, but you need to be able to get Bloom Vulture, an extra name, a way to force Azalea to resolve, and a way to keep playing past that, so breaking through on the draw game 3 is some magical Christmas land shit. Unfortunately for my opponents though, I am an extremely jolly fellow, so you know I open that shit. If you ever get to Arsenal Falcon, the game does just kind of end though. Once you can guarantee access to Ultimate Falcon, everything falls into place. Your opponent is forced to just watch in horror as you turn off any and all cards they might have lying around. Nothing feels safer than playing out the back half of your combo, knowing full well your opponent can't do anything to stop you from making a double-attacking 5300 beat stick that'll destroy their entire board, and he's not a big fan of the government. So for this first match, we're up against Voiceless Voice, and they opened kind of good. They're able to end on Saravis, both back row and a live Skull Guardian, plus an unknown set, but we've opened pretty good too. I start my turn with Soul Release, trying to bait the Radiance into summoning Old Man from deck, and it works. And now that there are 2 face-up cards in the back row, I feel fantastic activating this copy of Magical Spring. Naturally, this eats the Skull Guardian, so I go ahead and let Droplet rip, sending 2 to negate everything but the Skull Guardian. I could have sent 3, but the way I see it is that my Thrust is more valuable than my Magical Spring, because it represents a draw 2 without a discard and thins the deck a bit more. My thrusting talents are put on full display, and talents hits another Magical Spring, and since the activation was negated, I get to let the second rip. Doing this assembles Bloom Wings, so I'm on top of the world, given that the set had to be Imperm in my head, but after they do a few bounces to get cards in hand, it's revealed to actually be a Forbidden Droplet, and that I should just go fuck myself, I guess. I do this stupid little lollipop dance, trying to find some way to 3 bodies so I can make both Ys and a rank 4, but just Tribute on its own can't represent any more than 2. Playing around Imperm and keeping Raider's Wing attached to the Raider's Knight ultimately meant that I didn't have access to the extender I needed, and I'm dead to the follow-up. Going into game 2, I do my favorite little trick and side into a going first variant, and boy, this hand is a stinker. Luckily, Fuzzy does represent 2 bodies, so I'm able to pop off, but it's gonna be awkward. Chain blocking Wise was to make Ash seem unappealing. I could have also played around Imperm by summoning Wing instead of Mimicry, but at this point, I was just letting God do the work. Night goes through, and we keep making Ash not great by setting our intended search target and using Brave to get the intended set, so if they Ash, we could use Mimicry to get it, because fun fact, Mimicry can search any Raid Raptor card. Given that we already have Heal Engrave, we can just grab Strangle off Arsenal. Reborn a Fuzzy, and I'm feeling fine. Ars goes to Ultimate and Force grabs Wing, which Rising Rebellion gets out of hand through Vanishing. Grab Strangle for follow-up, flub the sequencing just a pinch with our redraw and add back, but this is a damn fine setup. Bluff a set card too, because that's just how I am. Opponent tries to bait out the trap with this enemy controller Diviner play, but I don't fall for it. Entis snipes the trap anyway, and they get to low. When they go for barrier, I shotgun a Cosmic. Droplet negates our Force Tricks, which I don't really get the point of until the Link Rebo comes down, and I realize they turned off the Wings protection. So it's now or never with this rank up, before they can make SP. I drop the 13, and we go next. Game 3 hand looks real dodgy, and our opponent found their way to Diviner, and they let me get to Pain Lanius. I'm thinking they have Droll, but I pass the vibe check and go for a 4. I don't want to throw away my Knight, so I try to bait Saravis with Force Tricks, and it ends up working out just like I drew it up. Talents to draw with a Chain Droplet for 2 means all I'm contending with now is the trap, and finding Magical Spring means I basically win if I time it right. Thrust adds a card I was testing at the time, Call. Hey, what do you think Raid Raptor Call sounds like? And then Bloom can get me back itself and Noir Engrave. Opponent tries to cut me on 2 bodies by popping the Call's target, but Magical Spring tops that cleanly. The Heal Eagle I found off the top refunds me on one of my discards, and it's smooth sailing from here now that Wise is on field. With Raid Raptors Force in hand, I go for Soul Shave as my set from Wise Tricks to play around Droplet, but they let it through, and now all 3 rums are in rotation. Arsenal lets me get my Tribute out of hand went through Vanishing, and I just totally forget to activate Tribute because I was really tired. When I summon Force Tricks, they econ to take it, but with Strangle in my hand, it doesn't matter. I link off into Wise, they bounce Cerevis because they know what's coming, and the Ultimate Falcon hits the board. I go for the effect early to try and beat Enable and Res of Strangle's effect to summon, which means I have to Soul Shave, but I don't really care how many resources I waste here because I now have Lethal. I make Force, grab a Simorg for funsies, get the material out from under Revolution, and Rising Rebellion destroys the field and clears the path for game. Our next best of 3 is up against Dragon Link, and this first game is rough. Gonna fast forward a little bit through their turn, but basically we're staring down Borload, SP, and a Search Baldrake with Nib and Valor in hand, as well as a hand loop from Levianeer. I really needed Levy to shuffle back one of the Raiders' wings, and there was a chance I could have made it work if that happened, but realistically speaking, I don't think I was breaking through all that, plus Nib and Valor. A top deck Noir Lanius really isn't fixing things, so I normal summon Tribute and go for the effect, expecting them to hold SP for my Xyz monsters, but they shotgun it, so I have to fire off the Droplet now. Fuzzy grabs Fuzzy, and I go to battle to try and find a rank up, but after walking over the SP, they reveal Valor, and I pack it up. The hand in game 2 is a bit better. We have good discards for the Droplet, but it's still a little sketchy. Opponent ends on Seal's Savage without access to the bestial half of their deck, and a top-decked Bloom locks it up for us. Bit of a punt here. I Droplet in main 1 and walk face first into a Droll and Lockbird while also Raptor locking myself. Really not ideal, but I can still find lethal. Bloom summons some bodies and Seal summons Magnamut, by the way. Isn't that cute that they think they're surviving? And now we can summon Heal and get off to the races. Wise eats a Valor, but we haven't normaled and have 1 extender, so the game is still ours. We normal Noir, make a second Wise, that way it's not negated, and summon Fuzzy to make Knight. Knight for Brave and Wise for Skip, and we decline to activate the Braves. Wise kills Magna and Arsenal hits the Borload for 17, then Direct twice for 64, 100 over lethal. Going into game 3, I'm not feeling amazing about the hand, but there are a lot of cards we can draw that make this broken, so I'm not too beat up yet.
This is great.
Opponent has Regained for Saronir. They try to IP into SP to banish our first summon, but a Droplet for 1 does that in. I was worried about the Seals for Baldrake, but a top deck called by means Seals isn't an issue in the slightest. We talents to rip the Nib out, and when we go to make our first Xyz, we get to tell Seals to fuck off. They do get a redraw if Regained, and arguably I was supposed to hold the talents for after, but never punished, it's a whiff. Once the Heal Eagle comes down, they see a have full combo, and they surrender. Our last match is up against someone on Branded. I don't really know how to read their name, I think it's like Galazzo or something. Instead of puppet locking, they opt to make a frankly ridiculous board of Retribution, Mirror Jade, Quem, and Mercurier. Oh my god, look at that top deck. This hand belongs in a museum, dude. We start things off with Duster, and when they don't have anything to say about it, we Droplet for free by pitching Noir, Bloom, and the Duster. Bloom Grave Effect eats the Mercurier, and that Unknown needs to go Nutso Bonkers style or they are dead here. Once they tell me to go off when Brave comes down, I know the game ends, so I'm just popping off. Ult resolves, and once the rank 13 hits the field, they pack it up. Going into game 2, I spy with my little eye an Ash Blossom against Branded. Unfortunately, they did break pretty hard, so I start going off, but once I assemble 2 names, a Super Poly comes down, and that ends my turn. No normal and no bloom means I can't play. I bluff set the Magical Spring, hoping to get some value out of it and the Fuzzy in hand, but no luck, they kept bricking. I take 3k and top deck Bloom. A great draw, but the second Super Poly is one hell of a thing. They finally find something, and I choose not to Ash Fusion Deployment, thinking it was just going to summon Cartesia, but turns out Albaz to make Rinbrum is lethal anyway, so, we lose. Can't believe that. Going into game 3, I decided to go first again, because I would not like to get puppet locked, and I opened Bloom Wing without needing to cowrie, so I feel fantastic. The Ash Blossom makes for an excellent cherry on top, too. Our sports-loving friend here doesn't have any hand traps, so we go off like normal, playing around Super Poly by telling Azalea to throw herself straight into the trash. A couple bluff sets later, and I'm feeling great. Opponent starts with a blind Cosmic trying to snipe the Rum, but they just hit a bluffed Cowrie, so I'm happy to let that go. They go for Branded Fusion, and I genuinely forgot that I had Ash in hand, so I Glorious Bright that shit, but Forbidden Droplet does force it through. They chain Opening to get a Quem that'll trigger, and when I try to rank up to destroy their field, I'm met with Called By, so the misplay with Ash was actually optimal because now I can Ash the Granguignol after they go for White Albion, because while I do have a commanding board, I think I have Lethal if I can avoid getting Puppet Locked. Retribution off the Albion does complicate things a bit, but with clever play, I think I can make it happen. It also helps that I top deck another Ash to beat Granguignol's other effect. Luck truly is the residue of skill. We kick things off with Roost to get key resources back in deck, and then use Heal Eagle to get our Rum back. Glorious Bright gives us Bloom, and now we have the gas to force through to game through Retribution. First, they use Granguignol to make us discard Ash Blossom, and then we clear some space by making a rank 4 and go for Talents to Take. This forces out the White Albion, which isn't ideal. I was planning to take the Albion to turn off Retribution, but this can work just fine too. I use Force to grab Strangle, then the Ash I was so generously given and the Force Strix are going to make an SP Little Knight, which will banish Retribution. Strangle gets us to Raider's Knight, so now that coast is clear, we can make our third tower and clear the field. Opening does have this annoying Graveyard effect, which protects Sanctifier, but we still have Lethal. Soldier Boy, fact of the day. Unaffected monsters bypass SP's restriction to attack directly.